Hello again, Internet. So, the last time I did a reading, I read to you guys the very first chapter of Fate Unwritten, which is the first book in my series. Today, I will be reading to you from The Spirit Catchers. Now, The Spirit Catchers is a supernatural fantasy novel about the afterlife and what would happen if it was no longer possible to die. Yeah, I know that sounds very dark, and admittedly, it is a little bit darker than my series. Not too dark, I hope, but yeah, I'm really excited about this book. I really had a lot of fun writing it, and I hope you guys will have a lot of fun listening to me read the first chapter to you. So, really quick little bit of background information here. The Spirit Catchers was my NaNoWriMo 2016 project, and then I eventually went on to self-publish it in 2017. And then since then, I've not been promoting it as much as I probably should, only because I have a lot of new stories coming out now. However, I really, as I said before, I really enjoyed writing the story, and I I found it very cathartic because, after my mom died, I didn't really think about death that much, only because I had to think about it so much before she passed away. But the story came to me very unexpectedly one day, and I thought to myself, okay, I need to tell the story. I really need to get some of this anger and frustration and grief and sadness out of my system. So I wrote the story from first person POV, and since then I've sort of wondered if that was a really good idea on my part because now people are like, oh, is this a story about your whole experience with grief? And I think in a way it is, but the story's not about me, as you will see from the very first line of this chapter. Okay, so first chapter. Here we go. First chapter. Chapter 1. Are you ready? I'm ready. All things considered, my death was pretty boring. Let me ask you something. When do people start thinking they're going to live a long life? For me, it was around age 10. I wanted to be an oncologist. To this day, I will never know what sort of divine influence planted that idea in my mind. All I know is that having cancer and treating cancer are as different as night and day. I was 19 when the symptoms first appeared. They started out small, as most things usually do. A bruise here, a nosebleed there. The fatigue was constant and immutable, mirroring my every move like a shadow until it became the darkness that swallowed me whole. Vial by vial, my own compromised blood wrote the final chapter of my life, turning the page on everything I thought I'd have time to do. This is cancer, the thread that unravels the rug, interrupting the patterns of our lives and the tapestry of our expectations. My attitude towards death had always been astoundingly cavalier. I never denied this possibility, even in the early days of my diagnosis when my body still responded to chemotherapy. I thought about death often and casually, between naps, during dinner, in the privacy of my bedroom on the rare occasion that I was home. Even then, I wanted to get it over with. I thought maybe it would be like hitting a reset button, and I'd wake up the next day feeling rejuvenated. But death doesn't work like that. Maybe if it did, we could finally break the stigma of being breakable. My prognosis had always been predictably bleak. I was told I had 6 months to live, but could buy myself 2 or 3 more if I consented to undergoing experimental treatment. I refused, saying there was no point in delaying the inevitable, not even if it meant that someone, somewhere, might benefit from my extended suffering. I didn't get 6 months. Instead, I got 4 months, 3 weeks, 5 days, 2 hours, and 17 minutes. My family didn't think this was enough time to say goodbye. I, on the other hand, thought it was too much. A few days before my death, a woman named Joy appeared at my bedside. Joy had sat in the corner of my hospital room, next to my mother, who'd been dozing on a cot and woefully oblivious to the lean but impeccably dressed woman who'd come to claim my soul. I thought I was dreaming, but in actuality I was just dying. On the first day, Joy didn't speak. Instead, she studied me in the way one might study a Picasso or a Rembrandt, with care and polite curiosity. Having Joy around made me feel safe, and it wasn't long before I began to welcome the sight of her blue dress in a world worn grey with despair. Joy was what most people would call a guardian angel, but there are no angels at the establishment. Collecting souls is both an art and a science, and it requires far more than wings to achieve. Enter the Spirit Catchers, a diverse cohort of supernatural entities tasked with escorting human souls to the hereafter. Truthfully, the title is a misnomer. Most spirits go willingly, so capturing is seldom required. Being terminally ill had all but left me helpless, so when the time came for me to vacate the cancer-ridden shell of my once youthful body, I had no choice but to do whatever was asked of me. This was good news for Joy, but not for my family, who did everything they could to keep the hope, and me, alive. On the second day, I asked Joy to tell me more about the establishment, if it had towering iron gates and lush, manicured lawns, or ostentatious wooden doors with heavy brass knockers, or marble staircases that vanished innocently into the clouds. Joy said there was none of that. I was disappointed, but far from surprised, especially given the utilitarian nature of the establishment's name. On the third day, I was calling out to her in agony. Joy had materialized in her usual spot in the corner of the room the moment my name sprang from her lips. I begged to die. I pleaded with her until my whole body tingled with exhaustion. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until I was woozy from a lack of oxygen and the lasting effects of whatever painkillers I'd been given to ease my misery. I wanted out. When Joy didn't take me, it felt like betrayal. But she wasn't betraying anybody, only following protocol. If I'd been a little stronger, perhaps I'd have asked about this too. Joy didn't take me that day. She said I wasn't ready yet. I begged anyway. In the midst of my protest, she'd approached my bed and laid a hand on my chest. Light emanated from her fingertips as she illuminated me, erasing the layers that stood between my spirit and the world I no longer belonged to. First the itchy cream sheets, then the dull blue ground, and finally my translucent skin. By this point, my body was producing bruises like a garden produced flowers, and it was becoming harder to ignore the presence of ribs or the absence of fat that normally concealed them. Joy bent her bright red lips close to my ear. She was cold and smelled like the inside of my grandmother's armoire, and it sent shivers of familiarity all the way down my aching spine. Ansel says not yet, she whispered, chilling me to the core. Soon. By the fourth day, I was ready to die. My life was over, and like discovering the blank page at the end of a book, I stared into the overhead lights. I wondered who was responsible for ending my story here. I expected Joy to tell me more about this being named Ansel, but she never did. My family came to say goodbye at 10:23 a.m. on September 4th, 2005. It was a long goodbye. My parents cried. My brother, who never cried, sobbed until he hyperventilated. And I just lay there, waiting for Joy, who was waiting for Ansel to give her the go-ahead to collect my soul. No one noticed the fair-skinned woman knitting placidly in the corner, because I was the only one who could see her. When it was finally time to make the transition, Joy returned her knitting needles to her bag, smoothed the wrinkles out of her dress, and walked the short distance over to my bed. I didn't look at her. I was too busy watching my family, who'd formed a prayer circle at the foot of my bed and were muttering tearful invocations under their breath. An odd habit, prayer is, Joy had remarked, folding her arms. I suppose it's par for the course. After all, this is your deathbed. Maybe they're hoping Ansel will change his mind. Ansel doesn't change his mind on much of anything. Can you imagine how complicated life would be if Death was always second-guessing himself? Joy then turned to me and smiled. Ready? I nodded. The machine flatlined. Then everything I ever knew suddenly disappeared. My name is Sarah Nicole Galloway, and my job? To help people die. Okay, so that was chapter 1 of The Spirit Catchers, and the rest of the novel basically follows Sarah as she tries to make a name for herself, as it were, in the afterlife, and now this is her job. This is her purpose, as she says. And of course, she does encounter a lot of challenges. You know, she's personally challenged. She has to face her own misconceptions about death and life and what it means to be human, what it means to have a spirit, a soul. So, you know, I know a lot of people don't really like to think about death and what happens after we die, but I mean, it is inevitable, right? Death is inevitable. So, I'm actually really curious to know what you guys think happens after death, life after death, that sort of thing. So if you want to leave a comment down below, maybe we can get some sort of hopefully civil discussion started, please. No personal attacks. And yeah, I will post a link for the paperback and the ebook down in the description below. And, as I said, if you guys want to hear more about the spirit catchers, you can leave some questions. I will try to answer them as best I can without being too spoilery. And, yeah. What else is there to say? Read the book. Anyway, people, I'm going to wrap this video up. It has been great hanging out with you again, and I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. As I said last time, I know things are crazy out there, and I don't know when they will get better. But, I think you need to have a little bit of faith. So, if you're looking for a sign that things will get better, this is your sign. Please take care wherever you are, stay safe, and I will see you when I see you. Thanks.